These are among our first images of Solomon Northup, an accomplished and established free man living in Saratoga, New York in 1841.
I have just the thing. Something to suit your style and yet sturdy enough for the 40-mile round trip.
It's beautiful.
At what price?
We will take it.
But in a devastating turn of events taken from the real-life Northup's own autobiography, the married father is lured to Washington, D.C., drugged and sold into slavery. The beginning of a profoundly upsetting saga told in the new film, 12 Years a Slave.
Well, I don't want to survive. I want to live.
Played to despairing perfection by actor Chiwetel Ejiofor, Northup is lost to a series of slave owners in the South. Even worse, he himself is lost to a life of compromise.
You luxuriate in his favor.
I survive. I will not fall into despair. I will offer up my talents to Master Ford. I will keep myself hardy till freedom is opportune.
Told in the same episodic nature as Northup's own account, the film brings us deeper and deeper into his grim, untenable existence. We are immersed in the landscape, the psychology, and disturbingly, the incessant abuse.
If there's something wrong, it's wrong with the instruction.
Black bastard. You goddamn black bastard, strip your clothes.
This is a film you don't see, but experience, and it will likely stay with you forever.
Jared Bowen is here, and you were telling us all this morning in the morning meeting how gripping this film was and how you had us all mesmerized by your description of it. What is it about it?
Because I think Steve McQueen is a director, and the way he takes you into this story, it's so intimate and it's so personal, and there are lots of close-up shots and there are lots of lingering shots. I mean, it seems minutes on end you can spend with him at moments. And so you're experiencing this abuse, you're experiencing in every way he's diminished, almost as if you were him. And I keep wrestling with the fact that my one criticism of the film is that it felt too long, but I'm not sure if that's because at the end I was just so obliterated that I couldn't wait to get out of the theater for the fact that I just couldn't bear anymore. I mean, that's how striking this film is, and it's how important this film is. And despite the way I'm describing it, I think everybody should see it. It's incumbent upon everybody to see it because many people have said this, and I echo the sentiment. It's probably the best depiction of slavery ever committed to film.
Yeah, because you and I both saw Django Unchained and The Butler, but it's nothing like that.
It's funny because I was thinking about Django Unchained, and that's sort of a cultural reference point because it just came out last year, and it sort of mimics this society, this time, these struggles to some degree, but it's in this outlandish, Quentino-ish pop culture way. So you look at that as sort of the movie, and then this is the real life experience. And I think in some ways, Django actually makes you appreciate this film that much more.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring Vincent Brown into the discussion from Harvard University. One of the things that Jared told me this morning, Vince, was that he's glad he saw the film. He could never see it twice, and you've seen it twice. Why?
I have seen it twice. This is what I study. I teach the history of slavery, not mostly in the United States and other parts of the Atlantic world. But I know this stuff, and still, this was the most powerful and profoundly affecting document about slavery that I've ever seen. And it's partly because of what Jared mentioned. There's a kind of psychological realism to it, where the director takes you in to these long take portraitures, right? Where you're looking at someone's face, experiencing the nature of the scene, experiencing suffering. For a long time, you experience their suffering, and then you begin to think about what it means to you. What would you do if you were in that place? And I think that's one of the things that's so profoundly affecting about the film. And it gives it a kind of psychological authenticity that I don't think we've had from films about slavery thus far. That doesn't make it a realistic depiction. It's still a matter of creativity and craft, because there was a Gordon Parks film in 1984 about the same story, right? But we expected different things from narratives of slavery at that time. We wanted more contextual takes, longer takes. We wanted to see the environment. We wanted to observe from a little bit more of a distance. Nowadays, when we look toward authenticity, we think, you know, he who feels it knows it. If we can really feel the scene, then we've experienced something authentic, and that's what we find in this film.
All right, without having seen it, the one part of it that would make me skeptical is this was an educated free man living in the North. Why couldn't he get away? I mean, I realize he was kidnapped and drugged, but once he was conscripted once, he couldn't figure out how to get out?
Well, no, he could, and that's dealt with in the film. I mean, these are circumstances in which there was no possibility of escape, and that's part of the journey that you go with him. That's part of, you want him to escape, you want him to be freed, and what Vince was just saying too. I think that's part of the struggle of this film, is that you start to register your own judgments and your own apathy. I mean, everything from what can he do more to how is he treating other people. There's sort of this hierarchy within the communities that he's enslaved in, and that's very difficult to watch too, because you're watching, again, I'm trying not to give too much away, but how he responds to other people, and it just becomes very, very uncomfortable, but you know that this is how they manage these untenable situations.
What you see is how difficult and how hard-won and how fragile solidarity is in this kind of situation, right? Where there is always an advantage to breaking solidarity with someone weak and powerless, another slave, and trying to make an affiliation with someone powerful who can do something for you, who can elevate your own circumstances, who can get you any kind of material good, maybe an extra piece of clothing, maybe an extra ration of food, rather than make common cause with another slave. And even though Solomon Northup sets himself apart through most of the film, I don't want to give anything away, but the film actually undermines that very subtly and then very powerfully by the end, his refusal to be part of that slave community.
I mean, and he does make these compromises, and that's to see him sort of become self-debilitating for the fact that you know that he can play the violin. This is how he's lured to Washington, D.C. to have a few gigs there, to be able to read and write, and you know that he's successful and accomplished because of those very first scenes. And then to see how, I mean, he becomes this withered person, but it's self-imposed. Again, it's just another layer of how difficult it is to watch this. And not even watch, like I said in the setup piece, it's an experience.
Just in terms of the film genre, one of the criticisms you hear, African Americans are never in a film unless it's about slavery. Is that a justified criticism, or is there's no way around it in this case?
Well, I don't know. Gordon Parks, who made the first version of the Solomon Northup story, had made Shaft as well, which is not about slavery. It's about an African American hero, blaxploitation hero. But I think that largely that's true, but I'm not so worried about that. It's a very important part, a fundamental part of American history that I think we don't see enough about. And so I'm not that concerned that we're seeing too many films about slavery when there just aren't that many made.
What was your analysis of Django and The Butler in compared to this?
Well, I'm not sure that Django is about slavery.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think that Tarantino has a certain set of themes, and one of them is sadomasochistic play.
Yeah.
And he's very interested in how an audience can take pleasure in cruelty.
Yeah.
And what better scene to find people doing cruel things to each other than slavery. You see it in his early films with the torture scene in the ear. You see it in the film about Germany in World War II. You see it in the GIMP scene in Pulp Fiction. Really what he's interested in is the nature of power exchange and how that works out in a scene. And slavery just happened to be a place where he could think about that. It's a fantastic film, but it's not a film about slavery. It's a film about power exchange and sadomasochistic play.
The New York Times had a great phrase to describe this film, which was banal evil. Kind of the focus on that.
Yeah, because, and this is part of what I was alluding to earlier too, in terms of the level of apathy. You have Benedict Cumberbatch plays one of the plantation owners, but he's sort of the good one, and you find yourself identifying with him because he treats him better, and then you think, wait a minute, let me hurdle myself back. What's my skew here?
Yeah, all right.
But there's something fascinating about that, which is that the film doesn't necessarily judge the white people as evil. The white people are in a predicament, just like the black people, and they're compromised as well.
All right, I'm going to go see this one. Vincent Brown, Jared Bowen, thanks.